I've always been the kind of person who overprepared for everything. Extra batteries? Packed. Offline maps? Downloaded. Emergency blanket? Folded neatly into the bottom of my backpack. Logan used to joke that if civilization collapsed, I'd probably have a checklist for it. You know, he said as we left the trailhead just after sunrise, adjusting the straps on his pack. I'm starting to think you secretly wanted the apocalypse. I laughed. No. I just don't want to die because I forgot something obvious. That's exactly what someone preparing for the apocalypse would say. That was Logan. Everything with him felt lighter than it should. We'd been friends for almost 4 years after meeting in college, surviving terrible group projects, late-night study sessions, and one unforgettable road trip where our car broke down 300 miles from home. Somehow, we always ended up laughing. When graduation came, everyone scattered. Different jobs. Different cities. Different schedules. We promised we'd stay close, and unlike most people, we actually did. So when Logan suggested spending a weekend hiking through one of the largest national forests in the state, I agreed immediately. No reception. No crowds. Just 2 days on the trail before returning Sunday afternoon. It sounded perfect. At least, it did at the time. The first few hours were exactly what we'd expected. The forest felt endless. Towering pines filtered the sunlight into long golden beams that reached the ground in scattered patches. Birds called somewhere overhead while a cool breeze carried the smell of damp earth and pine needles. It was peaceful. The kind of silence cities make you forget exists. You ever think about disappearing? Logan asked as we crossed a narrow wooden bridge over a shallow creek. What? Not forever. He shrugged. Just taking a month. No phone. No work. No internet. I think I'd panic after 3 days. I give you 24 hours. Probably. He grinned. That honest? I know myself. He laughed. You really do. That was another thing about Logan. He asked strange questions. Not because he wanted dramatic answers. Because he genuinely liked knowing how people thought. It made conversations with him feel different. Less like talking. More like slowly opening locked doors. Around noon we stopped beside a rocky overlook. The valley stretched for miles below us. Rolling hills disappeared into layers of blue haze while distant mountains cut across the horizon. Logan pulled out his phone. No signal. He looked offended. I wanted to make everyone jealous. You survived. Barely. We ate sandwiches in comfortable silence. The kind that only exists between people who've spent enough time together that nobody feels pressured to fill every second with conversation. Eventually Logan leaned back against a large boulder. You know what's weird? What? I've known you for years. Okay. But this is probably the longest we've ever spent completely alone together. I thought about it. He was right. There had always been classmates. Co-workers. Friends. Other people somewhere nearby. Now it was just us. Surrounded by miles of forest. Guess we're about to find out if we actually like each other. He laughed. If this ends with one of us getting pushed off a cliff, I'd rather know now. I'll warn you first. How thoughtful. By early afternoon, clouds began drifting across the sky. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to soften the sunlight. According to my downloaded map, we needed to leave the main trail for a smaller connector path that would eventually reach the old fire lookout where we planned to camp nearby. I checked the screen. There. A narrow path disappeared into thicker woods. Logan glanced at it. That doesn't exactly scream popular hiking route. It connects eventually. You sound confident. I downloaded 3 different maps. That somehow worries me more. We turned onto the smaller trail. Almost immediately everything changed. The sounds disappeared. No distant hikers. No occasional voices. Even the birds seemed quieter. The trees grew closer together. Branches weaving overhead until the sunlight barely reached the ground. The air felt cooler. Heavier. You noticed that? Logan asked. What? It got quiet. I nodded. Probably fewer animals near the thicker forest. Sure. He didn't sound convinced. Neither was I. Still, we kept walking. About 40 minutes later, I stopped. This isn't right. Logan turned. What? I zoomed in on the map. The blue location dot refused to move correctly. Instead of following the trail, it drifted several hundred feet away before jumping somewhere else entirely. GPS? Acting weird. He walked over. No signal? It shouldn't matter. Offline maps still use GPS. So either the map is wrong. Or? I looked around. Nothing looked familiar anymore. The trail behind us seemed almost identical to the one ahead. Same trees. Same rocks. Same endless green. I think we missed a turn. Logan frowned. Can we go back? We should. So we did. Or at least we thought we did. 20 minutes later we reached. Nothing. No intersection. No sign. No bridge. Nothing that looked remotely familiar. Logan stopped walking. Lucas. Yeah. I have a question. Okay. Are we lost? I wanted to say no. I wanted to smile and explain everything logically. Instead, I looked at my map again. The location marker had frozen completely. Battery, 81%. GPS active. Position unavailable. I swallowed. I think we might be. Neither of us spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, Logan exhaled. Well, I've had worse Saturdays. I stared at him. You're kidding. What else am I supposed to do? He spread his arms toward the endless forest. Panic? Eventually. He smiled. But maybe after we actually know how bad this is. I couldn't help laughing. Only Logan could make getting lost sound like a minor inconvenience. Okay, I said. We stay calm. Good plan. We backtrack carefully. Better plan. If that doesn't work, we make camp before dark. And tomorrow? We find the main trail. He nodded. See? What? You already have a checklist. I rolled my eyes. You're impossible. And yet you keep inviting me places. I clearly make poor decisions. He laughed again. The sound echoed strangely through the trees. For just a second, it almost sounded like someone laughed back. We both froze. The forest became completely still. Did you hear that? Logan asked quietly. I listened. Nothing. Just wind. Branches. Leaves moving somewhere above us. Probably an echo. Yeah. He didn't sound convinced. Neither did I. Still, we kept walking. Neither of us noticed the old wooden sign hidden beneath the vines about 30 feet behind us. Most of the letters had faded away decades earlier. Only 3 words remained barely visible beneath layers of moss. Property still occupied. We walked for another 20 minutes before either of us admitted what we were both thinking. We were going in circles. I recognize that tree, Logan said. I looked up. Every tree looked the same to me. No, seriously. He pointed toward a massive pine whose trunk split into 2 thick branches about 8 feet above the ground. Remember that lightning scar? I stared for a moment. He was right. The long black mark running down one side of the trunk looked painfully familiar. We already passed it. That shouldn't be possible. It is as if we've been walking in circles. Neither of us liked hearing those words out loud. I pulled out the compass clip to my backpack. At least that still worked. We've been heading northwest. Logan looked around. So how did we end up here again? I don't know. There wasn't a logical explanation. The sun hadn't disappeared. The terrain wasn't confusing enough to keep looping back. Yet somehow we had. Logan let out a slow breath. New plan. I nodded. No more wandering. We camp. Exactly. It was still early enough to keep moving, but neither of us wanted darkness to find us while we were exhausted and frustrated. We searched for nearly 15 minutes before finding a small clearing. It wasn't perfect. The ground sloped slightly, and old tree roots pushed through the soil in several places. Still, it was open enough to see our surroundings. Good enough, Logan said. We dropped our backpacks almost at the same time. Neither of us spoke much while setting up camp. The cheerful conversation from earlier had disappeared. Not because we were angry. Because every sound around us suddenly felt important. A snapping branch. Wind moving through the pines. The distant call of some bird neither of us recognized. Each noise made us stop for a second before continuing. You know, Logan finally said while collecting fallen branches for a fire. This is probably the first time I've actually appreciated all the emergency stuff you carry. I'll remember you said that. Don't. I absolutely will. He smiled. There you are. What? You. I never left. For a minute I thought panic replaced you. I was considering it. Glad you decided against it. His smile faded as quickly as it had appeared. So am I. By the time the fire was burning, the forest had begun changing again. The sunlight faded faster beneath the trees. Long shadows stretched across the clearing until everything beyond the firelight looked darker than it should. I checked my watch. 5:42 p.m. There should still be more daylight. There is. Logan looked toward the trees. We just can't see it. We ate quietly. Dehydrated camping meals had never tasted particularly good, but hunger made them easier to tolerate. Halfway through dinner, Logan suddenly froze. What? Listen. I stopped moving. At first I heard nothing. Then, a faint metallic sound. Clang. Several seconds passed. Clang. It sounded distant. Almost like someone striking metal with another piece of metal. I frowned. Do you hear that? Logan nodded slowly. Someone else? Maybe. Hope appeared in both of us at exactly the same moment. If someone else was out here, maybe they knew the trails. Maybe there was a ranger station nearby. Maybe we weren't alone after all. The sound came again. Clang. Closer this time. Logan stood. Should we call out? I hesitated. Something about the rhythm bothered me. It wasn't random. Every sound came after almost exactly the same amount of time. As if someone was working. No. He looked at me. Why? I don't know. That answer frustrated me. There wasn't a logical reason. Just a feeling. One I couldn't explain. The metallic sound continued for another minute. Then it stopped completely. Silence settled over the forest once more. Neither of us mentioned it again. Night arrived quickly after that. The fire became the only real source of light. Beyond it, the forest disappeared into darkness. Logan poked at the burning wood with a stick. You ever notice how different forests sound at night? How? During the day, they're alive. He glanced toward the darkness. At night, they feel like they're listening. I looked at him. You're not helping. I know. Another hour passed. The temperature dropped enough that we both pulled on extra layers. I checked my phone again. Still no signal. The battery had fallen to 72%. Logan leaned back against a log. If we're still lost tomorrow, we won't be. You don't know that. No. I sighed. I don't. He nodded. I appreciate the honesty. We stared into the fire for several quiet minutes. Then Logan asked something unexpected. Can I tell you something weird? When have I ever stopped you? He smiled. Fair. He looked into the flames instead of at me. I almost didn't invite you. That caught me off guard. Why? Because I wasn't sure spending an entire weekend alone with you was a good idea. I laughed. You thought I'd annoy you? No. His answer came too quickly. That wasn't it. I waited. The silence stretched. Finally, he rubbed the back of his neck. I've been acting strange around you lately. I noticed. You did? You've cancelled plans twice. You counted? I noticed things. He nodded slowly. So do I. Neither of us continued. Whatever he had been about to say stayed unfinished. A sudden crack echoed somewhere in the darkness. Not from the fire. From the trees. Both of us looked up immediately. Another crack. Then heavy footsteps. Slow. Measured. Crunch. 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 Something was moving through the forest. It wasn't running. It wasn't hiding. It sounded almost casual. Like whoever it was had walked this path hundreds of times before. Logan stood without saying a word. I did the same. The footsteps stopped. Roughly 30 or 40 feet beyond the edge of the firelight. Too dark to see anything. Neither of us breathed. Hello? Logan called. No answer. Only silence. I grabbed my flashlight and aimed it toward the trees. The beam swept across trunks, branches, and thick bushes. Nothing. No one's there, I whispered. Logan didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on one spot. What? He slowly raised one finger. There. I followed his gaze. At first I saw nothing. Then my stomach dropped. Between two trees stood what looked like the outline of a small wooden building. It hadn't been there before. I was sure of it. A narrow porch. A slanted roof. One dark window facing directly toward us. The flashlight beam barely reached it. Was that there earlier? Logan asked quietly. No. We would have seen it. Yes. The building sat less than 50 yards away. Close enough that it should have been obvious while we collected firewood. Yet neither of us had noticed it until now. The front door stood slightly open, moving back and forth in the wind with a slow creak. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us looked away. Then, without warning, a warm yellow light appeared inside the cabin. As if someone had just lit a lantern. Logan looked at me. I thought you said we were alone. I thought you said we were alone. I thought we were. Neither of us moved. The light inside the cabin flickered once, then became steady again. It wasn't bright. Just enough to illuminate part of the front window. You see anyone? Logan whispered. I narrowed my eyes. No. Me either. The strange thing wasn't that there was a cabin. The strange thing was how impossible it seemed that we missed it. We had walked all over this clearing collecting firewood. We had searched for flat ground. We had looked in every direction. There was no way an entire cabin had been sitting 50 yards away without either of us noticing. Unless. No. There had to be a logical explanation. Maybe the trees blocked it, I said. Logan looked at me. You believe that? No. He sighed. Me either. For nearly a minute either of us spoke. The fire crackled behind us while the cabin remained perfectly still. Finally Logan asked the question both of us had been avoiding. Do we go over there? My first instinct was yes. A cabin meant people. People meant help. Warm food. A map. A radio. Maybe even a vehicle. Every logical part of my brain screamed that this was exactly what lost hikers hoped to find. And yet, something felt wrong. I don't know. You've said that a lot today? I've noticed. He glanced back toward the fire. If someone lives there, they might know the way out. They might. They might also think we're trespassing. That too. He rubbed his forehead. I hate not knowing. So do I. Another gust of wind drifted through the clearing. The cabin door creaked slowly open another few inches. Then stopped. Logan stared at it. Did someone just open it? I don't think so. You're not making me feel better. I wasn't trying to. We stood there another 30 seconds. Finally Logan picked up one of the flashlights. We'll just look. No. He turned. No? We call out first. He nodded. There. He stepped forward just enough that his voice would carry. Hello? Nothing. We're hikers. Silence. We got lost. Still nothing. If anyone's there, we're sorry to bother you. The only response was the wind. Logan looked back at me. Well? I took a deep breath. If someone's inside, they definitely heard that. So either they're choosing not to answer, or there isn't anyone. Neither option made me comfortable. Still, standing here all night wasn't helping either. We go together, I said. And if something feels wrong, we leave. No questions? No questions. He nodded once. Okay. We grabbed both flashlights before leaving the fire behind. Almost immediately the darkness swallowed us. The warmth disappeared. The sounds changed. Every step through the leaves seemed unnaturally loud. The cabin grew larger with each step. Old wooden boards. A rusted chimney. Several broken windows covered from the inside with faded blankets. It looked abandoned. At least 50 years old. Maybe older. That doesn't look occupied, Logan murmured. No. We climbed the 3 porch steps carefully. Each one groaned beneath our weight. The front door hung half open. One old lantern sat on a small table just inside. Its flame burned steadily. Someone lit that, Logan whispered. Yes. But where are they? I shined my flashlight into the cabin. A single room. Dust everywhere. An old wood stove. 2 rocking chairs. Shelves filled with jars whose labels had long since faded away. Everything looked untouched. Except the lantern. It looked clean. Recently used. Hello? I called. No answer. Logan slowly pushed the door wider. The hinges squealed loudly. Still nobody came. This is weird. That might be the understatement of the year. We stepped inside. The air smelled different. Not like an abandoned building. There was dust. Old wood. Smoke. And something else. Fresh coffee. I frowned. You smell that? Logan nodded immediately. Someone's been here. Recently. Too recently. The coffee smell couldn't have lasted for years. It had to be hours. Maybe less. The lantern cast long shadows across the room. Our flashlight beams searched every corner. Nobody. No movement. No voices. Just silence. Logan noticed something near the fireplace. Lucas. What? He pointed toward a pair of muddy boots. Large ones. Standing neatly beside the wall. Fresh mud still clung to the soles. They're wet. I crouched beside them. He was right. The mud hadn't dried. Whoever wore them had come inside recently. Very recently. A chill ran down my back. They can't be far. Before Logan could answer, something thumped upstairs. We both froze. There was definitely a second floor. We hadn't noticed the narrow staircase until now. Another sound. A slow creak. As though someone had shifted their weight. Logan looked at me. You heard that? Yes. So we're not alone? No. We waited. Another creak. Then, footsteps. Slowly descending the stairs. One. At a time. Neither of us moved. The footsteps stopped halfway down. Hidden around the corner where we couldn't see. Whoever stood there wasn't trying to hide. They simply weren't coming any farther. Logan swallowed. Hello? Several long seconds passed. Then an elderly voice answered. You boys took your time. The words echoed through the cabin. Either of us spoke. The old man continued before either of us could respond. I've been watching your fire for nearly 2 hours. My stomach tightened. Watching us? How? Logan asked quietly. We never saw anyone. A dry laugh drifted down the staircase. You weren't looking in the right places. Slow footsteps resumed. An elderly man finally appeared. He looked to be somewhere in his 70s. Tall. Thin. Gray beard. Heavy flannel shirt. Worn suspenders. Nothing about him looked threatening. What caught my attention were his eyes. They were calm. Far too calm. As though two lost strangers walking into his cabin happened every week. "You're lost," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I answered. "I figured." He studied us for several seconds. Then smiled. "You can stay here tonight." Logan and I exchanged a quick glance. The offer sounded generous. Almost too generous. "You don't know us," Logan said carefully. The old man shrugged. "I know enough." He turned toward the wood stove. "Hungry?" Neither of us answered immediately. The old man chuckled. "Good." He picked up an old kettle. "Means you're still thinking." He poured hot water into 3 metal cups. The smell of coffee immediately filled the room again. "You're wondering whether you should trust me." Neither of us denied it. "You shouldn't." The words hit like ice. He looked up and smiled again. "At least not yet." The room fell completely silent. Then he added something that made every hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Especially after what happened to the last 2 hikers." The room went completely still. Logan was the first to speak. "What do you mean, the last 2 hikers?" The old man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he calmly handed each of us a steaming metal cup. "Drink." Neither of us moved. He smiled faintly. "Smart." He set the 3rd cup on the table before lowering himself into one of the rocking chairs. The chair creaked softly beneath him. "You're wondering whether I poisoned it." Logan gave a nervous laugh. "That crossed my mind." "It should have." The old man took a long sip from his own cup. Then another. Only after finishing half of it did he set it back down. "There." He nodded toward ours. "If I planned on poisoning you, I wouldn't drink it first." I exchanged another glance with Logan. Very carefully, I lifted my cup. Black coffee. Strong. Bitter. Nothing unusual. Still, my heart refused to slow down. "My name's Arthur," the old man said. "Lucas." "Logan." Arthur nodded. "I figured you two would introduce yourselves eventually." He leaned back. "Now ask your questions." I didn't hesitate. "You said something happened to 2 hikers." Arthur stared into the fire for several seconds before answering. "About 12 years ago." "What happened?" "They got lost." "That doesn't explain much." "No." His voice remained calm. "It doesn't." Logan folded his arms. "Did they die?" Arthur looked at him. "One did." Silence. "And the other?" Arthur sighed. "He found the road." "That sounds like a good ending." Arthur slowly shook his head. "No." "Why?" "Because he came back 3 weeks later." Neither of us spoke. Arthur continued. "He drove all the way here." "You mean this cabin?" "Yes." "Why?" "He couldn't remember why." I frowned. "That makes no sense." "No." Arthur nodded. "It doesn't. He said something kept telling him he had forgotten someone." The fire crackled softly. "He searched these woods for 4 days." Arthur's expression darkened. "He never found anything." Logan shifted uncomfortably. "So what actually happened?" Arthur looked directly at him. "I've been trying to answer that question for 37 years. You've lived here that long?" "Yes." "Alone?" Arthur didn't answer. Instead, he stood. "You should lock the door." My stomach tightened. "Why?" "Because it's almost dark." "It already is." Arthur looked toward the window. "No." He spoke quietly. "Not yet." Logan frowned. "What does that mean?" Arthur ignored the question. Instead, he walked to one of the windows and pulled the faded curtain aside. "Come here." We joined him. Outside, the forest looked wrong. The sky had been completely black only minutes earlier. Now a strange gray light filtered through the trees. Not sunrise. Not sunset. Just enough light to reveal shapes between the trunks. I checked my watch. 8:14 p.m. "That isn't possible." Arthur nodded slowly. I know. Logan stared outside. Did the fire go out? I turned. Our campfire still burned in the clearing. Exactly where we'd left it. Its orange glow flickered through the trees. We weren't gone that long. No, Arthur agreed. You weren't. A movement caught my eye. Near our campsite. Someone was standing beside the fire. I blinked. Logan. What? Look. He followed my gaze. His face immediately lost all color. A figure stood beside the flames. Too far away to recognize. Perfectly still. Watching our empty campsite. Is that? I don't know. Arthur quietly closed the curtain. Don't watch. I turned toward him. Who is that? I don't know. You just said you've lived here for 37 years. I did. Then how do you not know who's standing outside? Arthur looked genuinely tired. Because nobody ever sees the same person. The room became silent again. Logan laughed once. Not because anything was funny. Because his brain didn't know how else to react. What does that even mean? Arthur didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the front door. One by one. He slid 3 heavy locks into place. Then lowered an old wooden beam across the entrance. You really expect us to believe this? Arthur looked back. No. Then explain. Arthur studied both of us for several seconds. When you entered this forest today. Yes? Did either of you notice an old wooden sign? My heart skipped. The one covered in vines? Arthur nodded. You saw it? No. I remembered suddenly. The one that said? My voice stopped. Arthur finished the sentence. Property still occupied. Logan looked between us. You actually saw that? No. I rubbed my forehead. I remembered it. Arthur's expression changed. Very slightly. How? I don't know. That isn't possible. I know. Arthur became quiet. Finally, he spoke almost to himself. You remembered too early. A cold feeling spread through my chest. What does that mean? Instead of answering, Arthur walked toward one of the shelves. He removed an old leather notebook. The cover had almost completely fallen apart. He opened it carefully. Hundreds of handwritten names filled the pages. Dates. Short notes. Some entries stretched for several paragraphs. Others contained only a single line. Arthur flipped through them slowly. Then stopped. He frowned. What? You're not here. I looked at him. What? Arthur searched again. More pages. More names. Nothing. He looked genuinely confused now. That has never happened. Logan stepped closer. What hasn't? Arthur slowly closed the notebook. Everyone who enters these woods eventually ends up in this book. And? You two aren't. Silence settled over the room. Then, 3 slow knocks echoed against the front door. Nobody moved. Another 3 knocks. Steady. Patient. Arthur closed his eyes. Don't answer it. My pulse pounded in my ears. Who's outside? Arthur whispered without looking up. I was hoping you wouldn't have to find out. The knocking came again. 3 slow knocks. Not louder. Not softer. Exactly the same. As though whoever stood outside knew there was no reason to rush. Logan stared at the door. They know we're in here. Arthur didn't move. They've known since you crossed the property line. My mouth went dry. You keep saying they. Arthur nodded. Because I stopped pretending it's only one. The room fell silent. The only sound was the steady ticking of an old clock mounted above the fireplace. Knock. 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 Logan whispered. How can someone knock like that and not say anything? Arthur answered without taking his eyes off the door. They're waiting for one of us to answer first. Why? They always wait. I looked toward the small window beside the entrance. I can look. No. Arthur's voice was sharper than anything we'd heard from him all evening. Do not stand in front of that window. Why? Because if someone outside sees your face. He stopped. Logan frowned. What happens? Arthur looked at him. I honestly don't know. That isn't reassuring. I wasn't trying to reassure you. The knocking stopped. The silence afterwards somehow felt even worse. I realized I had been holding my breath. Slowly, I let it out. Maybe they left. Arthur shook his head. They're still there. How do you know? They never leave this quickly. Logan rubbed both hands over his face. I feel like we're missing about 90% of this conversation. You are. Then tell us. Arthur walked back to his chair. For the first time since we met him, he looked exhausted. Older. Like carrying something heavy for far too long. When I was 28, he began quietly. I got lost in these woods. Logan and I exchanged another glance. You? Arthur nodded. I wasn't alone. Who were you with? My younger brother. He stared into the fire. We came here to hunt. What happened? Arthur took a long breath. We found this cabin. A chill spread through me. Just like us. Yes. There was an old man living here. Neither Logan nor I spoke. He told us not to answer the door. Arthur smiled sadly. My brother thought he was crazy. The room suddenly felt much colder. He opened it. Silence. What happened to him? I asked. Arthur looked at me. I've spent 37 years trying to answer that. My stomach tightened. You never found him? Arthur slowly shook his head. No. He just disappeared. I watched him walk outside. Arthur's voice remained calm. Then I watched someone who looked exactly like him walk back toward the cabin. Neither of us breathed. But it wasn't my brother anymore. Logan whispered. That's impossible. I know. Arthur looked directly at him. I told myself that too. What did you do? I ran. Arthur laughed quietly. I've been here ever since. The words took several seconds to sink in. You stayed? I couldn't find the road. For 37 years? Arthur nodded. I stopped trying after the first 10. Logan stared at him. You expect us to believe you've been trapped here for decades? Arthur reached into his shirt pocket. He removed a worn leather wallet. Inside was an old driver's license. The photos showed a much younger version of him. Issue date: 1989. Expiration date: 1994. I stopped getting older, Arthur said. Neither Logan nor I knew what to say. That can't be real. I wish it wasn't. The cabin suddenly groaned. Not the ordinary sound of old wood settling. This was different. Long. Deep. As though something enormous had leaned against the outside wall. Everyone froze. Another groan. This time from the roof. Logan looked upward. What was that? Arthur slowly stood. They're getting impatient. They? Arthur walked toward the fireplace. He reached above the mantel and pulled down an old hunting rifle. The wood was scratched from decades of use. He checked the chamber automatically. You have a gun? Arthur nodded. It won't stop them. Then why carry it? It reminds me I can still make choices. The answer somehow frightened me more than the rifle itself. Another sound echoed outside. Footsteps. Several sets this time. Walking slowly around the cabin. Crunch. 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 Not rushing. Simply circling. Logan moved closer to me without realizing it. How many are out there? Arthur listened. At least 4. My heartbeat became painfully loud. There was only one before. There usually is. Then why 4 now? Arthur didn't answer. Instead, he looked directly at me. Lucas. Yes? When you looked toward your campsite. Yes. Did you recognize the person standing there? I frowned. No. Arthur watched me carefully. Think again. I closed my eyes. The memory returned. The figure beside the fire. Too far away to recognize. Tall. back turned toward us. Dark jacket. Backpack. Wait. My eyes opened. No. Logan looked at me. What? The backpack. What about it? It looked familiar. Arthur nodded very slowly. I was afraid of that. Logan's expression changed. What are you talking about? I swallowed. I think. My voice almost failed. I think he was wearing my backpack. Nobody spoke. Logan laughed nervously. That's impossible. I know. You left it outside? No. I turned. Both of our backpacks were still leaning against the wall beside the fireplace. Exactly where we'd placed them. Arthur quietly closed his eyes. They've chosen. The words landed like ice. What does that mean? Logan demanded. Arthur looked at us with genuine sadness. It means they finally decided which one of you they're going to copy. Before anyone could say another word, a voice came from outside the front door. Calm. Clear. Perfectly familiar. Lucas. Every muscle in my body locked. Logan slowly turned toward me. You didn't say anything. I know. The voice came again. Exactly like mine. Even the breathing sounded identical. Logan. My blood ran cold. It isn't me. Logan whispered. I know. Then the voice outside laughed. It was my laugh. Exactly my laugh. Arthur gripped the rifle tighter. Without taking his eyes off the door, he spoke quietly. Whatever happens next. He swallowed once. Do not answer yourself. Nobody moved. The cabin felt impossibly small. The fire cracked softly behind us while my own voice waited outside. Logan. It sounded exactly like me. Not close. Not almost. Exactly. Even the slight rasp I got after hiking all day was there. Logan looked at me. I hate this. So do I. Arthur slowly raised one hand. Stay quiet. The voice outside waited several seconds. Then it spoke again. Arthur. The old man's expression changed. For the first time that night, he looked afraid. You know that voice? Logan whispered. Arthur answered without looking away from the door. Yes. Who is it? My brother. Silence. You said he disappeared. He did. But that's his voice. Arthur nodded once. I haven't heard it in 9 years. The knocking never came. Instead, footsteps moved slowly across the porch. Back and forth. Back and forth. As if someone outside was reading the cabin through the walls. Listening. Waiting. Then another voice joined the first. This one belonged to a woman. Gentle. Warm. Arthur. The old man's breathing became uneven. Logan frowned. Who was that? Arthur didn't answer. His eyes had become distant. As though he wasn't inside the cabin anymore. He whispered almost to himself. My wife. A chill spread through the room. You had a wife? I asked quietly. Yes. She lived here? No. Arthur closed his eyes. She died 26 years ago. Neither Logan nor I spoke. The woman's voice came again. Please open the door. Arthur gripped the rifle so tightly that his knuckles turned white. She never sounded frightened, he whispered. She always sounded calm. The voice outside sounded exactly that. Calm. Patient. Loving. Arthur. I know you're inside. You've been alone long enough. Logan leaned toward me. How could they know that? I don't know. Arthur suddenly turned around. Both of us stepped back instinctively. They don't read minds. His voice was firm now. They read memory. What? They don't become whoever they want. Arthur pointed toward us. They become whoever you want. The words settled over the room. Logan looked confused. I don't understand. You heard my brother. Arthur nodded toward himself. I heard my wife. Then he looked directly at me. And Lucas heard himself. My stomach tightened. Arthur continued. They search until they find the person you'll trust most. Logan stared at me. That's why it copied you. Arthur nodded. Exactly. Another voice echoed from outside. This time, it belonged to Logan. Lucas. His head snapped toward me. I didn't. I know. His voice outside sounded perfectly normal. You left your flashlight out here. Logan's face lost all color. I never said that. No. Arthur answered quietly. You only thought it. Nobody spoke. How is that possible? Logan whispered. Arthur looked toward the ceiling. I stopped asking 30 years ago. Silence settled again. Then, a loud crash exploded somewhere behind the cabin. All three of us jumped. Arthur rushed to the back window. He carefully lifted the curtain only an inch. His expression immediately hardened. They're behind us now. How many? Arthur counted silently. 1, 2, 5. He stopped. No. His voice became barely audible. 7. Logan looked sick. There were only 4. Arthur lowered the curtain. There will be more. Why? Arthur turned toward us. Because neither of you answered. That sounds like a good thing. It is. For now. The cabin suddenly shook. Not violently. Just enough to make dust fall from the ceiling. Another impact. This time against one of the side walls. Boom. The lantern swung overhead. What are they doing? I asked. Arthur answered immediately. Testing. Testing what? The house. For what? How badly we want to leave. Another impact echoed through the walls. Boom. This one sounded stronger. Arthur walked calmly toward a small wooden cabinet near the fireplace. He opened it. Inside were dozens of notebooks. Identical to the first one. Every shelf was completely full. Logan stared. How many are there? Arthur looked at the notebooks. 1 for every year. My heart skipped. You've documented all of this? Yes. Why? Arthur handed me one of the older journals. Read the last page. My hands shook slightly as I opened it. The handwriting had become messy near the end. Almost rushed. I found the final entry. It contained only one sentence. If you ever hear someone using your own voice, remember this: it only knows what you've already said. It doesn't know what you're about to choose. I looked up. Arthur nodded. That's how I survived. Logan frowned. What does that mean? Arthur pointed toward the door. They copy memory. Yes. They copy voices. Yes. They copy faces. Yes. But they cannot predict you. Silence. That gives us one advantage. The words had barely left his mouth when someone knocked again. Only once this time. Then a familiar voice spoke from the porch. Arthur. It wasn't his brother. It wasn't his wife. It wasn't me. Or Logan. Arthur slowly closed his eyes. No. His voice cracked. No. I looked at him. What? He whispered something so quietly I almost missed it. My son. Logan stared. You have a son? Arthur nodded without opening his eyes. I did. Outside, the young man's voice sounded warm. Comfortable. Almost cheerful. Dad? You've been hiding long enough. Arthur's hands began to tremble. Dad? Please! I finally found you. A tear rolled down Arthur's face. He hadn't reacted like this to anything else. Not even his wife's voice. Arthur, I said quietly. He looked at me. His eyes were filled with something I'd never seen before. Not fear. Hope. Real hope. I buried my son. Nobody moved. Arthur smiled sadly. I buried him myself. Outside. His son's voice laughed softly. Then came 5 words that changed everything. You buried the wrong one. Nobody spoke. Arthur stood perfectly still. His face had gone completely pale. Outside, the young man's voice remained calm. Dad? You always said you'd know me anywhere? Another pause. So why are you afraid to open the door? Arthur slowly lowered the rifle. Don't, Logan whispered. Arthur didn't answer. His eyes never left the entrance. I buried him. His voice barely rose above a whisper. I held his hand. I watched him die. Outside came a soft chuckle. That's what you remember. Arthur closed his eyes. No. Memory changes. The voice sounded almost gentle. You've had 37 years to change yours. I took one careful step toward Arthur. Listen to me. He didn't react. Arthur. Nothing. Logan quietly moved to the other side of him. You told us they use memories. Arthur swallowed. Yes. Then that's exactly what this is. For several long seconds Arthur simply stared at the door. Then he nodded once. Almost imperceptibly. I know. He raised the rifle again. Outside, the voice sighed. You've become stubborn. Another voice suddenly joined it. Mine. Arthur. You don't owe us anything. My stomach tightened. The second voice continued. You can leave. Logan and I will stay. I looked at Logan. Either of us had spoken. Arthur smiled bitterly. They're trying something new. What? They're giving me permission. To do what? To save myself. The words lingered in the air. Then Logan's voice echoed from outside. Arthur. Take the truck. There isn't enough room for everyone. Arthur laughed quietly. There hasn't been a truck here since 1998. The voices stopped. Silence returned. It lasted nearly a full minute. Then, an engine started somewhere in the forest. Logan frowned immediately. No. I looked toward him. What? That can't be real. The engine idled softly. Deep. Familiar. Logan slowly looked toward Arthur. My Jeep. Arthur nodded. They found yours. Logan shook his head. I parked it at the trailhead. I know. It can't be here. Arthur didn't argue. He simply listened. The engine revved once. Then again. The unmistakable sound echoed through the trees. Logan stared at the floor. My keys. What about them? I asked. They're in my backpack. I turned instinctively. Both backpacks still rested beside the fireplace. Arthur noticed. Check. Logan hurried over and unzipped the front pocket. He froze. They're gone. A cold wave washed over me. What? My keys. He searched again. Every compartment. Nothing. I know I packed them. Arthur quietly nodded. They don't create things. They borrow them. The engine outside stopped. A car door slammed. Then footsteps approached the cabin. Confident. Unhurried. Crunch. 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 They stopped directly outside the porch. This time no one knocked. Instead, someone tried the doorknob. Once. Twice. The heavy wooden beam held. Arthur exhaled slowly. They've never done that before. Logan whispered. Is that bad? Arthur looked at the door. Yes. Why? They're learning. The doorknob stopped moving. A moment later, a flashlight beam swept across the front window. Bright white light pierced the gaps in the curtains. Then another beam appeared. And another. At least 4 flashlights moved around the cabin. Searching. Logan's breathing became shallow. They're acting like real people. Arthur nodded. They're getting closer. To what? Arthur didn't answer. Instead, he walked toward the staircase. You should both come upstairs. Why? The bedroom only has one window. That doesn't sound safer. It isn't. Arthur looked directly at us. But from there you'll understand. Without waiting, he climbed the stairs. Logan and I followed. The second floor was smaller than I'd expected. Just one narrow bedroom beneath the slanted roof. An old iron bed. A wooden dresser. A cracked mirror. Nothing unusual. until I noticed the wall. Photographs. Dozens of them. Covering nearly every inch. Some were black and white. Others faded color. Families. Couples. Groups of hikers. Children. Old men. Young women. Hundreds of faces stared back at us. Logan stepped closer. Arthur. Yes? Who are these people? Arthur looked at the photographs. They stayed. My stomach tightened. All of them? Yes. I studied the nearest picture. 3 smiling hikers stood beside the very cabin we were in. Their clothes looked straight out of the early 1980s. One of them looked strangely familiar. I leaned closer. No way. What? Logan asked. I pointed. The guy on the left. Logan stared. Then his expression changed. He looks like. Arthur finished the sentence. You. Silence. The resemblance wasn't perfect. But it was close enough to make my chest tighten. Same height. Same dark hair. Even the smile looked familiar. When was this taken? I asked. Arthur checked the faded date written beneath the frame. 1983. I looked at him. I wasn't even born. I know. Logan slowly turned around. There are more. He was right. Another photograph. Another young man. Again, the resemblance was unmistakable. Not identical. Just close enough to be unsettling. Then Logan found another. This one looked like him. Then another. And another. The room suddenly felt much smaller. How many? Logan whispered. Arthur answered quietly. I stopped counting years ago. I walked farther along the wall. Every decade. Every generation. Different people. Different faces. Yet somehow. Some of them looked like us. As though the forest had been collecting the same people over and over again. What is this place? I asked. Arthur stared at the photographs. I've had 37 years to think about that. And? I don't think it wants people. He looked directly at me. I think it wants replacements. The words settled into complete silence. Then, a loud crash exploded downstairs. Wood splintered. The entire cabin shook. Logan grabbed the doorframe to steady himself. Arthur closed his eyes. There inside. A second crash followed immediately. Then, slow footsteps. Not outside anymore. Inside the cabin. Walking across the first floor. One pair. Then another. Then another. Arthur looked at us with a calm expression neither of us understood. They've never crossed the doorway before. My pulse hammered in my ears. What changed? Arthur listened to the footsteps climbing the staircase. 1 step at a time. Then he answered in a voice barely above a whisper. I think they finally found the person they came for. Nobody breathed. The footsteps continued climbing. Slow. Patient. Never rushing. Each step echoed through the cabin until it became impossible to tell how many people were actually coming upstairs. Arthur looked toward the bedroom door. They've never reached this room. Logan swallowed. What do we do? Arthur's answer came immediately. We stop running. I stared at him. You've spent 37 years hiding. Yes. And now? He smiled. I finally understand why it never ended. Another step creaked outside. The footsteps stopped just beyond the bedroom door. Nobody knocked. Nobody spoke. They simply waited. Arthur slowly walked toward the photographs covering the wall. He reached behind one of the old frames and pulled out something wrapped in faded cloth. He unfolded it carefully. Inside lay a yellowed map. Not a hiking map. A hand-drawn one. The forest. The cabin. The trails. Dozens of notes written in different handwriting. Logan stepped closer. You made this? Arthur shook his head. No. The first family did. The first family? They built this cabin. He pointed to the oldest photograph on the wall. A smiling couple stood outside the newly finished cabin. The date beneath it read 1889. Arthur traced one finger across the map. They weren't lost. They lived here. So what happened? Arthur looked at the center of the map. They found something. My eyes followed his finger. A circle had been drawn deep in the forest. Inside it were only 2 handwritten words. Don't follow. Logan frowned. That's helpful. Arthur gave a tired smile. The page underneath is more useful. He turned the map over. Several paragraphs filled the back. The ink had faded badly, but most of the words remained readable. Arthur handed it to me. I read aloud. If someone answers the voices, the forest keeps growing. If someone refuses, it looks for another. But if the ones inside leave together before sunrise, while refusing every voice they hear, the path opens once. Only once. Silence. Logan looked at Arthur. You've known this? Arthur nodded. For years. Then why didn't you leave? Arthur looked toward the closed bedroom door. I was never alone. The answer hit us both at once. Every person Arthur had found. Eventually someone had answered. Someone had believed a familiar voice. Someone had opened a door. The cycle had started again. Arthur quietly folded the map. But tonight is different. How? You two never came separately. He smiled faintly. You trusted each other before you trusted this place. Another silence settled over the room. Then my own voice came through the door. Lucas. I didn't react. It tried again. You forgot your backpack. Nothing. Logan's voice followed. Lucas. Come on. We're almost home. Arthur nodded approvingly. Don't answer. The voices became louder. Faster. More desperate. Arthur's wife. His brother. His son. My parents. My college roommate. Logan's older sister. His father. Voices we'd never mentioned during the trip. People only memory could know. Some laughed. Some cried. Some begged. Some apologized. Every single one sounded real. Logan quietly reached for my hand. Not out of romance. Out of fear. I held on just as tightly. Arthur noticed. Good. The footsteps outside suddenly stopped. Complete silence. Then, something scraped slowly across the bedroom door. Long nails. Wood splintered softly. Arthur looked at the window. The sun. I turned. The darkness outside had begun changing. Not much. Just enough that the black sky had become dark gray. Morning. Arthur walked toward the bedroom window. Without hesitation, he unlocked it. Cold air rushed inside. The path opens at first light. He looked at both of us. When I say run. What about you? Logan asked. Arthur smiled. I've already had my chance. No. I shook my head. You're coming. Arthur looked genuinely surprised. I can't. Yes, you can. I don't belong out there anymore. You don't know that. The first ray of sunlight slipped through the trees. Arthur looked toward the bedroom door one last time. Then back at us. For the first time since we met him. He smiled without sadness. Maybe I don't. A deafening crash exploded behind us. The bedroom door burst inward. We didn't look. Arthur shouted. Run! The three of us climbed through the window together. The moment my feet touched the ground, everything changed. The forest no longer looked endless. A narrow trail stretched ahead. Clear. Obvious. Impossible to miss. Go! Arthur yelled. We ran. Branches whipped past us. The voices followed. Calling our names. Laughing. Crying. Promising. Threatening. None of us looked back. The trail curved sharply around a ridge. Suddenly, there was the parking lot. Logan's Jeep. Exactly where we'd left it. Morning sunlight flooded the trees. Birds sang. The air felt warm again. We stopped running only after reaching the vehicle. Logan turned immediately. The trail behind us was gone. Only dense forest remained. No path. No cabin. Nothing. Arthur wasn't there. Arthur! I shouted. No answer. Only wind moving through the trees. For a long time neither of us spoke. Finally Logan unlocked the Jeep. His keys sat exactly where he'd left them in the center console. Neither of us questioned it. We drove away in complete silence. Neither of us looked back. 3 months passed. Life slowly returned to normal. At least on the surface. Neither of us talked much about the forest. Not because we forgot. Because neither of us knew how. People asked about the hiking trip. We simply said we got lost overnight. Nobody asked further. One Saturday morning Logan knocked on my apartment door. I found something. He handed me an old newspaper. The article had been published decades earlier. The headline read, "Local search ends after 2 hikers vanish." I read every word. Near the bottom was a photograph. A rescue team standing beside a cabin. An elderly man smiled quietly in the background. Gray beard. Suspenders. Calm eyes. Arthur. The article was dated 1974. 30 years before Arthur claimed we met him. I looked at Logan. This can't be right. I know. He pointed toward the caption. The names of everyone in the photograph had been listed. Except Arthur. Beneath his picture were only 4 words. Identity never determined. Neither of us said anything for a long time. Finally I folded the newspaper. You think he's still there? Logan looked out the window. I hope not. So do I. Another silence. Then he smiled. You know something? What? We never actually finished that hike. I laughed for the first time in weeks. No. We definitely didn't. He stood. So next weekend? I stared at him. You're kidding. Different forest. He smiled. Much different. I laughed again. Deal. As he walked toward the door, I noticed something sticking out from between the newspaper pages. A folded piece of paper. I didn't remember seeing it before. I opened it. Inside was a single sentence written in faded handwriting. Thank you for leaving together. There was no signature. Only one small mark at the bottom of the page. A tiny hand-drawn cabin. With its front door standing open.